Hey now.
Hello again, friends. Welcome to Scott Fox After 9. This week is cooking. Download numbers are great. Lots of new listeners checking in, and I love it. Coming up on today's episode of Scott Fox After 9, I've got some incredible audio for you. I'm going to show you how bad our political discourse is. I know there's a lot of people, and I can tell this from reading through my DMs, a lot of people that are very frustrated with politics right now, namely because of the floor crossing and the fact that we have a majority government that we didn't actually elect and things like that. I understand all that. But when you see them acting like children, I think that's what really gets people going. When they go into the place where they're supposed to do the people's business and they act like absolute kids or lunatics in some cases. I've got some great audio to give you a demonstration of that coming up in just a few minutes. First off, two things that are on my mind right off the top of the pod. Two things. Number one, it looks like the federal government is going to go ahead with a plan that they've had for a long time now to regulate the internet. They think there's a lot of influencers out there, and maybe I fall into that category. I don't know if I do or don't, but they say there's a lot of online influencers out there who are spreading misinformation and disinformation and confusing the Canadian public about what the real intentions of the government are. Well, let me ask you, given the track record of this government, is it more likely that people like me are spreading mis and disinformation? Or is it more likely that the government is doing things that they really just don't want the Canadian public to know about? See, the problem here is the mainstream media, they all fall in line. They're not going to rock the boat. They like their access to the Prime Minister's office. They like getting their media subsidies and funding. They're not going to rock the boat. They're not going to hold the government to account. But there are a handful of people, and growing every day, by the way, people online, non-traditional media, like podcasting, that'll go on the air and tell it to you straight, kind of like I do every single day. Now, I don't get accused very often, if at all. I can't really recall a scenario where I was accused of spreading mis or disinformation. But I know that there's some influencers out there who go a little bit further, and I'm sure that the government doesn't like it. What happens then? If the government moves to regulate the internet, they would essentially be able to control what some of the online folks are doing. Is that fair? Is that right? I'll give you a second to think about that. I think the overwhelming response was no, that's not fair at all. This is a democracy and people have a right to speak their mind and share their opinion with the people who consume their content every single day. But the government doesn't want to get behind that. For the influencers that spread maybe a conservative or more right-leaning message, they're going to move to regulate them, to deplatform them, and potentially open them up to lawsuits. That's the way this is going. Blacklock Reports has got a great article on this today. That is behind a paywall. They are independent media out of Ottawa, and they do real great work. Google them if you want. Blacklock Reports. You have to pay for their service, but they do a great job, and they've got a great article out today about the government about to move forward with regulating the internet. The Liberals will decide what is and isn't mis and disinformation. I think that sets a very dangerous precedent, but I'm also aware that I personally am not necessarily in their crosshairs because if nothing else, I at least try to be down the middle, and I do declare my bias in just about every opportunity that I get. By the way, this is a good opportunity to declare my bias. I am a conservative. But beyond that, I have to say conservative because that's how I will vote. That's how I identify. But first and foremost, I think I'm more of a middle class guy. I think that the middle class needs a voice, and that's part of the reason that I do what I do every single day here on the pod. A lot of DMs recently just thanking me for doing this pod every day from people that learn something every single day from this pod that they didn't get from the mainstream media. And that's part of the reason we can't allow this federal liberal government to start regulating the internet where they pick the winners and losers and where they decide what is and isn't accurate information or mis and disinformation. The other thing on my mind is the federal Liberals are also going to go ahead with the suggestion that maybe they should ban young people from social media. I brought this up on my radio show this morning on Light 92.1 across Southern Ontario. You can get that station, and it really is good. Nice, feel-good, light music for your day, and I'm on in the morning from 5:30 till 9. I asked people, is this right? Should the government play a role here in parenting children, or should parents parent their kids? In Australia, they have banned social media for people under 16 years old. And the federal government here in Canada is considering doing the same thing. I got to tell you, and keep in mind, I've got a slightly older audience on Light 92, but it's still representative of people out there. Most people, in fact, almost all of them, were in favor of the government banning social media. A bunch of older folks want to take something away from younger folks. And they say the reason is because social media is destroying kids' mental health. Hey, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. I can only go by my experience. I had kids that were on social media. They're still on, by the way, but not that long ago, they were teenagers, and I let them use social media. But we had some rules in my household, and I think that there's a lot of households that probably do have some common sense rules to control the screen time, even if it's simple things like phones don't go to your bedroom when you go to bed. They get plugged into the charger in the kitchen, and you can get it in the morning. Things like no phones at the table. Things like that are small, simple ways that you can set simple boundaries and start to send a message to kids that that phone isn't the be all and end all, and you'll be totally fine if you're without it for a while. But what about those kids that don't have those fail safes there? A lot of people seem to want the government to impose themselves into that scenario. The problem is you can't just go into that scenario. It's got to be all or nothing. It's either going to be banned or it's not for people 16 and under. You know, maybe in itself, banning it for 16 and under, maybe I could see where people were coming from. But there's another story that's come out in the last couple of days, and it has to do with high school students in Ontario specifically. The Ontario government has announced some changes where attendance is now going to make up to 15% of someone's grade. I actually asked my radio listeners about that too, and people were very in favor of that, wondering why we stopped doing that in the first place. Now, part of the reason that that's necessary is because it's come to light. Only about 30% of high school students make it to school 90% of the time. Only 1 in 3 are achieving acceptable attendance levels. And I'm wondering, why is that? When I was younger, this was not something that we discussed or negotiated or anything like that. I either went to school or I got my butt kicked by my mom. You couldn't not go to school. But for whatever reason, there seems to be a lot of young people today who have convinced their parents through whatever means necessary that they deserve to stay home certain days, that they shouldn't have to go to school certain days. And a lot of them are missing a lot of time in school. So given that we know only a third of high school students are getting 90% attendance right now, and I'm hearing that there's a lot of people who want social media banned for kids under 16 years old because it's doing negative things to kids, I'm wondering, is this maybe just a parenting issue? Could that be it? And I'm just spitballing here because I don't know, and I think that every household is different. Every household is dealing with a different set of challenges. But overall, if there's that big a problem getting young people off their phones, and there's that big a problem getting young people to go to school, isn't that a parenting problem? Is that something we can change with government intervention? I mean, assigning a portion of the final grade to attendance, I think I could get behind that. When I was in school, it was actually a reverse onus kind of situation where you could lose marks for having poor attendance, but you couldn't get better marks just for showing up. And I thought that that system was fine by and large. But what's changed here in that kids don't want to go to school and they don't want to put their phone down and parents want the government to jump in and parent? And I'm also wondering, what's your threshold for government interference in the rearing of children? What's your threshold? We're talking right now about the government through grades incentivizing kids going to school, something that they always had to do, and still they do have to, but for whatever reason, they've convinced their parents they don't have to go or shouldn't go. Okay. We've got a lot of people that seem to want the government to step in and ban social media for kids under 16 years old. Blanket ban. Nobody will be allowed to have a social media account. Where do we draw the line? What if the government says, you know what, we've realized there's way too many kids that aren't eating healthy meals. So we're going to mandate that parents, you've got to make sure that there is a protein, 2 servings of vegetables, and one carb on every dinner plate every night. Are you going to be okay with the government telling you what you can and can't feed your kids? Are you going to be okay with the government mandating other things like, hey, we know that kids need social interaction, so it's going to be law. Parents, once a month, you got to take your kids out to an attraction somewhere in Canada. Isn't that getting into a creep where we have to draw the line and say, hey, wait a second, you're the government, go ahead and set laws and spend our money responsibly and protect our nation and look out for our national interest. But you get out of my house and you leave the parenting to me. I'll decide what's best for my kid. And if I decide my kid is going to have craft dinner for dinner one night, I shouldn't be breaking the law if I do that. Now, granted, I would never just serve craft dinner, but there are some households where that does happen, and that's totally fine. That's a parent making their decisions for their kids. How much government interference do you want in your household, especially when it comes to kids? It's an open-ended question, and I don't know that we'll be able to solve this in 1, 2, or even 3 conversations, but this is one that I think people should be having around the water cooler. This is one that I think families should be having around the dinner table. Do kids even know the Carney government is going to ban kids from all social media until they're 16 years old? And how's that going to work? When you turn 16, do you have to make a choice like, do I want to go and get my G1 or do I want to open up a TikTok account? And also, we know that kids are very, very resourceful at getting around rules. Is it possible that we're going to give parents a false sense of security that their kid is now safe? They're totally immune to mental health issues because we've blocked them from social media. I mean, in a lot of cases, they shouldn't feel a sense of security because, yes, kids can get around it, and because it isn't necessarily the social media that's causing the issue. It isn't nonstop body image issues that people are encountering when they use Instagram, for example. A lot of the issues come through bullying and things like that, and a lot of that originates in places like group chats. I mean, the government can't stop that. Would parents be getting a false sense of security that their kid is fine when really they're not? We've only just dealt with one of the problems. Or could all of this be solved with a re-education for kids and parents? Hey, here are the dangers of social media. Now you know, and here's how you can regulate it and put some common sense rules in your household to make sure that this doesn't become an issue for your family. Lots of different ways we can go with this, friends. I'm really not trying to lead you in any particular direction, and I don't really have a dog in this fight. My youngest is 17 at home, and he's in high school, and yes, he does have a social media account, but we do have rules in our household, and by and large, he seems to be using it just fine. Anything I've ever seen him do online, he does very responsibly and very professionally. Social media is also something that arguably is going to be a major part of many, many different careers going forward. Are we maybe limiting kids' potential by not allowing them to even engage with it until they're 16? So many different questions. It's a great topic. Have this conversation in your household. And if you want to weigh in on the pod, shoot me a note. Full disclosure, tomorrow's listener DMs episode is completely full. I've got so many great DMs for tomorrow. I can't wait to share them with you. It's going to be a real thought-provoking episode. I hope you can tune in tomorrow. But I am interested in hearing what you're discussing in your life. Social media ban for kids 16 and under. Is this really the solution, or should we deal with the root issue, which seems to be a parenting issue? Is that the problem? I know there's some people who have probably got their blood boiling right now. They're ready to fire off a DM. I love it. You can find me on all of the social platforms at Scott Fox on air. Now, friends, I want to get to some audio. The civility in politics seems to be waning. It really does. Let me take you to yesterday. Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre, both in the House of Commons at the same time. That doesn't happen nearly as often as you'd think it would. They were going at it yesterday over gas prices, and it got really, really heated. A lot of yelling here, especially on the Prime Minister's side.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
There are 3 Liberal taxes on gasoline. There's the excise tax. There's the new Liberal carbon tax that they call the fuel standard. And then they charge the GST on those other taxes. Because of Conservative pressure, this Prime Minister...
The Honourable Member for Hamilton, Ancaster, I believe it is far too loud during
Okay, so we're already acting like children. This is the leader of His Majesty's loyal opposition asking a legitimate, bona fide question about taxation to our Prime Minister. And a Liberal backbencher can't shut up for 10 seconds to hear the question.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition may start from the top.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. There are 3 Liberal taxes on gasoline. Number 1, there's the excise tax. Then there's the new Liberal carbon tax they call the fuel standard. And then they charge the GST on those other 2 taxes. Now, with Canada having the highest grocery price inflation in the G7 and paying 20% more at the pumps, we put the pressure on the Prime Minister, and he's partially backed down, removing only one of those taxes and only for a third of the year. Why doesn't he follow our full plan to reduce gas prices by 25 cents a litre by getting rid of all the taxes for all the year?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, what the government is proposing is to cut the excise tax, 10 cents a litre for gasoline, 4 cents on diesel. We've already cut the consumer carbon tax, 18 cents per litre. We are recycling all the excess revenues from higher oil prices to Canadians. What we are not doing is what the Leader of the Opposition is proposing, which is to substantially increase the deficit, something he's regularly against, by more than $3 billion, because this government can count, Mr. Speaker. This government can count.
It's a little unhinged, you know? That's the Prime Minister, and he got asked a serious question. And yes, it's true, thanks to pressure from the Conservatives last year, the federal government, the Carney government, did remove the consumer portion of the carbon tax. And that did bring down the price of gas a little bit, although the oil producers seem to have found a way to get that price back up. What the Conservatives are calling for here is wipe out all of the taxes. This new clean fuel standard adds to the price per litre. The excise tax adds to the price per litre. The HST is charged on top of the other taxes. That's why it's called a tax on a tax. The Conservative proposal was simple. Wipe out all of those taxes until the end of this year. Give Canadians a break, because right now they're really struggling. And the Prime Minister kind of fluffed it off. And I'm really not sure why. And if he does want to fluff it off, that's fine. It's his prerogative. I guess he has a majority government right now. He can get away with that sort of thing. But still, why get rude and aggressive about it? Saying they can't count? By the way, the Prime Minister also suggested, Pierre Poilievre was suggesting, that we add to the debt. It doesn't necessarily need to add to the debt. Sure, we would be bringing in less revenue if we dropped the taxes on gas for a while, but we could also cut spending. The problem is, this government doesn't want to cut spending.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
What he is not doing is increasing the deficit. It's only up by 100% since he took office, Mr. Speaker. Does he even read his own budget, or does he want Canadians not to know what's inside it? In fact, all the money printing that he does, because he's famous for causing inflation, he's made a career out of it. Statistics Canada has made it clear that the gap between rich and poor is now greater than it's ever been in a report published just this week. One of the biggest taxes on the poor is the gas tax. Instead of just removing a third of the tax for the third of the year, why not get rid of the entire Liberal tax on gas for the whole year?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, one thing I've learned in my economics education is you've got to study history and you've got to look at numbers. My record as a central bank governor is inflation less than 2% at the Bank of Canada, inflation less than 2% at the Bank of England. But let's get back to where we are today, which is wages in this country are growing at more than twice the rate of inflation, and I'll spell it out for the member opposite. That means Canadians are getting ahead.
Okay, just leave it there. We don't need to keep going back and forth here. I just wanted to hear some of the discourse that's happening here in Ottawa, and it's not very respectful. You know, I mean, Canadians kind of got screwed here. We got a government that we didn't even vote for. We've got majority powers for a minority government. They're not really getting that stings for a lot of Canadians. They're basically patronizing us. They're taunting us. Look at the Prime Minister going on and on about how much wages are going up. Maybe it is for some, I think for the vast majority, not going up fast enough if it's going up at all. And I think by and large, the vast majority of people are more worried about keeping their job than getting a raise right now. While we're talking about political discourse and civility in our politics, that was a little bit of a kind of unhinged exchange yesterday in the House of Commons. Let's go to Queen's Park in Ontario. The Premier, Doug Ford, was asked a question about fixing OSAP. For those who don't know, quick Coles notes, the Ford government, who at one point said they are for the people, they don't say that very much anymore because not a lot that they're doing is for the average common person. And you can tell because Doug Ford not only slashed OSAP grants, took away opportunity from middle class families, took it away. He said, you're either going to accumulate more debt or you're going to go into the trades. And that's all there is to it. That's what Doug Ford is doing here. He is going to decide what your kid does for a living, not you. And if you decide to go against what he wants, and he wants them in the trades, by the way, if you decide, no, they're not going to go to the trades, they're going to go into something else, then you'll take on a monumental amount of debt. That's the record of Doug Ford right now, and that's the reason that I just can't get behind this Ontario government, because of that attack on middle-class families. Well, Doug Ford got asked about that yesterday. Listen to this rant. Listen to how unhinged this was in the People's House where government business is supposed to be done.
I'm listening to a bunch of amateurs that have never met a P&L statement in their life. They have never, ever run a business. I wouldn't trust you with my daughter's lemonade stand. You bankrupt the lemonade stand. You sell off the lemons because that's what you do. You're a bunch of amateurs. I don't, you know.
I'm going to ask the Premier to withdraw.
Withdraw for calling you an amateur.
Withdraw. Okay.
Listen to what that turned into. Trying to have a debate about something important. You know, I maintain that Doug Ford has every right to slash the OSAP grants if he wants to. My problem with this is that he slashed them with no notice and then taunted students and families and accused them all of fraud. It's how he did it. It's gross. It was an attack on middle-class families by the government that used to tell everyone they were for the people. And then when they get asked a serious question in the People's House about that, that's the kind of rant that the Premier goes on, calling them amateurs, saying he wouldn't trust them to run his daughter's lemonade stand. Okay, I mean, be that as it may, still got to have a respectful discourse here in politics. And frankly, I'm not hearing that from the government. These are serious questions from the opposition. I defended it federally, and I'm defending it provincially. The opposition plays a role. They're allowed to ask questions. They shouldn't have to face something like that. That was incredibly inappropriate from the Premier of Ontario. But the Premier's got some other issues to deal with. It's been announced that Ontario is going all in building more jails. They're going to spend a lot of money building jails. It's also been revealed that we have more staff in the jails than we have actual inmates. So that might be a problem, but I'm not going to dive into that. Yesterday, Ontario's Solicitor General, Michael Kersner, was asked by the Queen's Park Media Corps, Colin DeMello in particular, about a new report that Ontario somehow mistakenly released 150 people that should be in jail. Here's the Solicitor General.
Well, listen, Colin, I'm going to get to the bottom of what happened. I'm going to make sure that we understand exactly what happened. You have to remember something, that we have many people moving in and out of our correctional system every day. There's a judicial system, there's an administrative system. I'm not satisfied that one person is released improperly, and I'm going to get to the bottom of it.
Is there a public safety risk to these individuals who were inappropriately released?
I'm going to get to the bottom of this as soon as I absolutely can.
Yes or no, is there a risk for the public?
One is too many. We're going to get to the bottom of it, and we're going to do so with dispatch, and we're going to tell and reassure the Ontario public that our priority of protecting Ontario will not waver. It will not change at all. We're going to be laser focused, and I'm going to get to the bottom.
Yes. How can you say you're protecting Ontario, Minister, when you're accidentally releasing criminals? How is that protecting
Ontario? The bottom of it.
Minister, do you know where the criminals have gone?
And that was the end of it. With the door closed, he just walked away. 150 people that are supposed to be in jail got released. Okay, but are we in danger? Like, are these serious, hardened criminals that might be armed or involved in gangs, or what's going on? We have a right to know the answers to these questions. I don't know exactly when the Solicitor General found out about this, and I have no reason to think that he is not fully engaged on this. But those were very dismissive answers, and that's the kind of stuff that makes people so cynical about politics. That's a totally fair question, and I believe it was Richard Southern from City News that asked it. Is there a risk to public safety? Why can't we know that? They know 150 people were mistakenly released. I mean, how does that even happen? But since it did, okay, are people safe, or is there a danger here? We'd like a little more information. A simple, yeah, we'll look into it and get back to you. I don't know if that cuts it for the vast majority of people. I'm going to move on, though. That covers a couple of different things there when it comes to civil discourse. But let's keep that conversation going in a slightly different way. I am on record now as saying, and I didn't think I'd be saying this, to be honest with you, I kind of like the new leader of the federal NDP party. His name is Avi Lewis. He was recently elected by the party. And while I disagree with him vehemently, most political issues are not going to be something that him and I agree on. However, I do like his style, and I do like what he adds to the conversation. I liked his comments, and I played them the other day about surveillance pricing. Well, there's something else he wants to talk about, and it has to do with politics overall. Here's Avi Lewis yesterday on Primetime Politics on CPAC.
I worry about our relationship to our own vote and to democracy. We're living in a time of rising authoritarianism around the world. A two-party system in the United States, where they're kind of interchangeable in some ways, led to the cynicism and the alienation that led to Donald Trump. And we need to have a vote that's meaningful, which is why we also need proportional representation, so we don't have 36% or 37% of the vote giving a government absolute power. And things like floor crossings, they just erode the sense that Canadians have that our vote matters. And so I think it's troubling. I really do.
Okay. How refreshing is that to hear a federal leader talking about our electoral system and trust in democracy? He's right. People got so frustrated with the way things were in America under Joe Biden that they handed the keys and carte blanche power to Donald Trump. One extreme to the other. And that's not good. I think by and large, Canadians like having a centrist government. A little bit of the conservative policies, a little bit of the liberal policies, but everything has gone very, very extreme with the federal government. That's going to lead to alienation, and eventually it's going to bubble over into possibly the populist leader that everybody is afraid we might get. I don't think anybody wants that. I don't know if people are really thinking country first, and not the least of which I'm talking about the government itself. I don't know that they're thinking country first. I think Canadians want to, but our political divide is so wide, it's concerning. Avi Lewis there said 37% of the vote should not give government absolute power. And he's right. When are we going to talk about electoral reform in this country? When are we going to talk about getting rid of, and I mean in a serious way, what Justin Trudeau promised when he was running back in 2015? Electoral reform. That's what we need. Get rid of the first past the post system, and let's go to a system that is far more accountable to voters and far more representative of the voters in this country. 36 to 37% in our system could give you a majority government, provincially or federally. That's not right. You know who else I want to hear from? Someone we haven't in a while. She's the leader of the federal Green Party, Elizabeth May.
I want to make a couple of obvious points first, as leader of the Green Party of Canada and someone who pays close attention to politics. I noticed that on April 29th, Scarborough Southwest and University Rosedale and Terrebonne were all Liberal seats. So I find it interesting that we now have a lot of coverage of the Liberals have swept in the by-elections and almost no commentary on why there were by-elections. Obviously, Terrebonne is the exception to every rule, being a Supreme Court decision that due to an Elections Canada egregious error, a voter's vote wasn't counted. But I don't think Bill Blair, the MP for Scarborough Southwest, campaigned in April to say, please elect me for a little while, nor did Chrystia Freeland say, I don't plan to stay. The by-elections have been created by the Prime Minister's internal decision-making with his cabinet about roles for high-profile people in safe Liberal ridings. I don't think we've seen the end of it. Certainly there are abundant rumors that the next high-profile, and I think much-respected Liberal who is no longer in cabinet, Jonathan Wilkinson, may be headed for a diplomatic post, which will cause another by-election. By-elections are expensive, and they are difficult for voters when they've just had an election. It's hard to engage people in a by-election. So I make those comments just to say the seat count has changed, not partially because of floor crossing, but only because of floor crossing.
I find it very refreshing to hear that message coming from the far left. You don't go any further left than the Green Party. Even they're calling out the hypocrisy of the mainstream media and the federal government. This isn't a left versus right thing. It's a liberals versus the people thing. Everybody agrees that what the media is putting out there, what the liberals are putting out there, that Canada somehow elected them with a majority government because of those by-elections, everyone, including the far left, knows that that is simply not true. It is simply not true. A couple more things I'm going to play for you just quickly because I think these are interesting, to say the least. I want to go to yesterday, again, in the House of Commons, Marilyn Gladu, the one who used to aggressively go after Prime Minister Carney and before him, Prime Minister Trudeau in the House of Commons, the floor crosser, someone who many believe was actually much further right than most conservatives, has somehow decided her entire political ideology changed and she's a liberal. Yesterday, she got to ask a question as a liberal. The difference between her asking a question as a conservative and a liberal are vast.
Leadership and a real plan to build a strong and more independent Canadian economy. Since the conflict in the Middle East began, this global volatility has impacted the wallets of Canadians. We need more direct support for them. Yesterday morning, we saw just that. Can the Secretary of State inform Canadians how our new government is bringing down costs for essentials at home in the face of instability abroad?
I mean, she just read it. It was written by the Liberal governing team, whoever it is behind the scenes that does all the prep for the members of Parliament for when they're in the House of Commons. She just read it verbatim, completely contrary to everything she believes, but she got something. She got something. Yesterday, I referenced an article that Brian Lilly from the Toronto Sun wrote. He's and I hadn't read the article when I gave it a plug. I just thought it was an interesting concept. That's why I mentioned Brian's article yesterday in the Sun. Well, lo and behold, once I actually got a hold of it, some pretty revealing stuff in there. Promises of things like judicial appointments and more for floor crossers. That's the kind of stuff that's going on. My simple question is, where is the RCMP? It's illegal to bribe a public official. That should also mean it's illegal for a public official to bribe a public official. Why is there not an investigation going on? And if there is, why hasn't the RCMP made that known to Canadians so they can rest assured that what's happening with our democracy, they're on it. They're looking into it to make sure that laws aren't being broken. And if laws are being broken, I'd like to know that they're ready to lay charges. That's what I would like to hear from our federal police force. It's very, very simple. If something nefarious is going on here, and it seems like there is, there should be a criminal investigation. And if warranted, there should be criminal charges. You're not allowed to bribe somebody who's in office. Even if you're in office, you're just not allowed to do that. You can't say to somebody, hey, we really want to pass some stuff and we're all going to get rich off of this. We can include you in on that if you cross over the floor and vote with us. That's not right. Canadians don't want to know that that sort of thing is happening with their federal government or with any level of government. It's just not right. Last thing I'm going to do on this episode, a member of Parliament that I like a lot. She is the member for Newmarket Aurora, I believe. Her name is Sandra Kobena. Real smart woman, and Sandra was in front of the House of Commons yesterday, and she was talking about the gas relief that we're going to get starting next week. See, here's the thing. We are going to get a little bit of relief. The federal government is going to cut out the excise tax that should save about 10 cents a liter on regular gas. But they timed it in a way that it's not going to kick in till Monday, which is the same day that apparently the gas stations are switching over to their summer blend, which they charge at least 10 cents a liter more for. Sandra was talking about that yesterday.
Grocers are being presented with fuel surcharges from their suppliers. And I wondered, first of all, I guess that was inevitable, that was going to happen, and now consumers are going to pay more for it.
That's right. I mean, we've seen the increase in gas prices, and that it has a ripple effect. It has a ripple effect on transportation costs, on farming, and ultimately the cost of food. So it is no surprise that we are seeing that surcharge, because it's not, of course, a small bump. It is significant. And I'm sure you have also seen now that the summer fuel blend has arrived, which means that the summer gas, and this happens every year, will be increasing by about 10 cents per liter. And I mean, it doesn't take a genius to realize that ultimately erases any savings that the suspension of the excise tax that the Prime Minister announced yesterday would have provided Canadians. We do, though, still have an opportunity to vote on the motion that we put forward, the Conservatives put forward, where we are proposing that all federal taxes are being removed. The 3 federal taxes are removed for the remainder of the year. And so if we are able to approve that plan, then there will actually be a relief for Canadians in the summer.
Yes, that would actually bring down the price compared to what we see on the sign right now. If we got rid of all 3 federal taxes on gas, that would certainly bring the price down, even though the summer blend is coming. You know what's interesting about this, though, friends? And I'm going to leave it on this particular note here because I want you to think about this. Exactly 1 year ago, we were paying the carbon tax. We were paying the consumer carbon tax, and there was the industrial carbon tax. We had to pay it. And the media and the government spent years under Justin Trudeau, and for a couple of months under Mark Carney, years telling us that carbon tax did not increase the price of food. They said it had no impact on the price of food. And Conservatives, led by Pierre Poilievre, were very, very emphatic. Yes, it does. When you increase the price of fuel, which is what a carbon tax does, that gets passed on from the farmers to the warehouse workers to the transportation workers who get it from A to B, the terminal, and then the terminal to the store. It has a ripple effect throughout the system. And the media and the government swore up and down that is not true. That is not a thing. They said, you guys are lying to Canadians. Well, lo and behold, now that the consumer carbon tax is gone, now the same ones who insisted that that wasn't happening are now all too happy to go in front of a camera and say, these high gas prices are contributing to the cost of food. We need to go after it because it's making food more expensive for Canadians. Yeah, it always was. It was them who insisted that wasn't true when they were trying to defend the consumer carbon tax. Thank God that thing is gone, but the industrial carbon tax has got to go too. Friends, tomorrow I am real excited to read your listener DMs. Let's make an appointment. This time, tomorrow, another episode of Scott Fox After 9. I'm going to leave you with the sounds of Pat James and The Whole Truth. Hey now.